One more thing I'd like to add to give our game a bit more life is another parallax layer of our seaweed animation. This will pass at a different speed than the rest of the parallax background so things don't look too uniform. To make things easier, I'll just add another class called CParallaxBackground that extends our background class. This will be superimposed, if you will, on top of the background class I've created, and will be the one referenced in the game screen. So I've created a seaweed mold GUI animation sheet. It will act as our mold so we can use one GUI animation sheet with a clone function to share bitmap data. And I'm going to create a seaweeds array. This is where we'll push our cloned bitmap data. And we'll also create an array of pointers to seaweeds removed from our stage. Finally, let's create a sprite layer where we'll contain all of these objects. We'll call it seaweed layer. Great. Now in our constructor function, let's pass through a number by which we'll reduce our parallax speed and a number for our game speed, similar to how we did in our background class. And in fact, we'll invoke super to pass these parameters through using our background's functionality. We'll also instantiate our seaweed mold. And I'm going to override a public function build, which is already created in our super class. Super.build, and I'm going to add child seaweed layer. Next, we'll also override our advance function. In our advance function, we'll constantly perform a test to see whether the current number of seaweeds on screen is less than that dictated in our game settings. If it is, we'll run the function createSeaweed. Only we'll make it so that there's a chance on every enter frame that it won't appear to add a bit of randomness. To define our probability, we're going to use math.random, and we'll use a for loop to iterate through all of the seaweeds on the stage. So const speed number equals speed times parallax speed reduction, which will calculate the speed in pixels per frame. And in our for loop, we're going to iterate through all of the seaweeds on the stage. Int equals 0, I is less than seaweeds.length, I++, and inside this for loop we'll progress the horizontal position of every seaweed inside of our array. We're also going to perform a test inside of our for loop to test whether the seaweed is off screen to our left, meaning we've passed it. If it is, we'll remove it from our layer. We'll splice it out of our seaweed array, we'll stop its animation, and we'll push it to our unused array. So if SWX is less than negative SW width, seaweed layer dot remove child, and then seaweeds dot splice, SW.stop, and unused seaweeds push SW. Don't forget we have to return a boolean, so we're going to type return super.advance. Before moving on to our createSeaweed function, let's create the variables we reference in our game settings. I'll put them under our background settings header. create a public static const seaweeds amount, which is the amount of seaweeds we want on stage at any given time. And we're going to have a public static var, public static var, probability for seaweed. And this probability, of course, is out of 100, and it happens on every enter frame. Back inside of our cParallax background class, let's create a const SW GUI animation sheet that we also reference inside of our for loop. And it's going to equal to our seaweed iteration. Let's also have it progress horizontally left, dictated by our speed amount. And we're going to have another if statement. If the seaweed's length is less than gamesettings.c_weeds_amount, and if it is less than the amount we want, we're going to check to see if our probability has been achieved, and if it is, we're going to create a seaweed. Now in our create seaweed function, we're going to create a variable called SW, which is going to be a GUI animation sheet. And we're going to check to see whether the seaweed arrays don't hold the setting amount of total seaweeds. And if they don't, we're going to create a new one. If unused seaweeds.length plus underscore seaweeds.length is less than gamesettings.seaweeds_amount, and inside we're going to have SW equal seaweed mold.clone, which means we're going to clone it from our mold. And we're going to set its Y position to stage height minus the height of our SW display object. Plus math random for a bit of randomness. Be sure to use scaling factors to ensure it appears the same on all devices. Else, if our unused seaweed array length plus our seaweed array length is not less than the amount we want, meaning it is the amount we want, we'll get a seaweed from our unused array. Finally, in our create seaweed function, we'll set the horizontal position to be the right of our stage. We'll start the animation, we'll add our SW variable to our seaweed layer, and we'll push it into our used array. So to begin with, let's set it to the right of stage. +10 just to ensure it's not visible. We're going to play our animation. We're going to add our child to our seaweed layer. And we're going to push it to our seaweeds array. Great. Now we're ready to integrate our sea parallax background into our game screen. Thanks for watching.